In this episode of our video series on how you can use StellarDS.io, we are going to have a look at authentication. How can you use authentication to perform our API requests to the StellarDS API? And so we are going to have a look at what's different between the OAuth 2 way to authenticate and using our API key, how you can secure the API keys with domain locking, how you can create the OAuth 2 application with its client ID and secret, and finally we will do all of this in Postman, where we will use both the OAuth 2 way to access our StellarDS API and also our API key. So let's dive into Postman, StellarDS.io, and see how these pieces of the puzzle fit together. And here I am in the StellarDS.io website, and I can go to the StellarDS.io application via Manage Database, where I can see under Applications both the OAuth way of using the API or using an API key directly. I have already created an OAuth application called Postman, for obvious reasons that we will use this in Postman, and I have also already created a Postman API key. So with the OAuth application comes the client ID and the client secret, the client ID which you can see here, and also the callback URL. This is the specific callback URL that is supposed to be used by Postman. The client secret is something you only see once. You see it only after creation of the new OAuth application, and after that, for security reasons, it's only saved in the backend of StellarDS.io. So if I create a new application, and let's say we use a localhost redirect URL for this one, and we give it read-only permissions, and I create this new application, you can see that the secret appeared here. When I click on the secret, it is copied to the clipboard for easy using it in your own applications. But after this creation, when I refresh this page, this client secret will no longer be shown. So also that's a guarantee that if you have not safely stored it yourself, no one else will be able to see or access this again. And the same applies for API keys. So when I create a new access token, for example, and we give this also the read-only permission, here you see we have also the additional domain locking possibility. This is optional, and this means that when you specify a domain here, like for example mywebsite.com, this means that API requests with this specific API key will only be permitted coming from this domain. That is, if someone would get access to your API key, he will not be able to use this from any other domain than the domain mywebsite.com. So that's a kind of guarantee, assurance that the API key will only be usable from your own web applications running from your own domain. When I create the API key this way, you can see that the API key is shown here. It's shown also only once. So you click it to copy it and store it in a safe place for you. It remains here under the API keys, but the API key itself will at no time be visible anymore when I refresh this page. So we are up and running. We have created an OAuth application and we have created an API key. So let's move to Postman to use these in a sample. We have a collection of Postman examples here, and we have for this video a set of examples, the OAuth 2 one and the API key one. At this URL, and the URL is also in the description under this video, At this URL you can find this Postman collection, so you can also use it yourself. This is the item that you will find in the Postman collection, and I have already created a fork because it is in this fork that I will specify my variables. So if you look at this item here in the Postman collection, you have the variables, and here are all the variables that are needed in this Postman example to be performed. And that includes the client ID and client secret of our OAuth application, the one I created here in StellarDS.io under OAuth, this one. And we also need a variable for the token name that is actually a variable that Postman itself will use to store an obtained access token. The API key is the one that will be used for the example where the API key will be used instead of OAuth 2. And finally, we also need to specify the project ID of our project, and you can find this here. So if I go under overview, this is the project. Same here, if I click it, it is copied to the clipboard, so I could easily paste it here in this variable. And then we have table, because for this example, we will just use an API request to show contents of a table. And so I used the table ID. Here is the overview of all the tables that I have. And I just took the ID of the first table for this specific example. And so let's move to the first example, the OAuth 2 based authentication. And when I go to the authorization page, here you can see the button, and that is how Postman will actually perform the authentication and authorization. When I click this, I'm seeing the StellarDS.io login form, so that this is part of the OAuth 2 flow, and there I'm supposed to enter my credentials for this authentication. That is actually part of OAuth 2, and that guarantees that your credentials, your username or email and password, is only given to StellarDS.io and not to your application, not to Postman itself. It stays safely with StellarDS.io only. When I perform the login here, you can see that Postman was, through the OAuth 2 flow, able to successfully obtain the access token, which you can see here. This is the token name that I specified as a variable, and here is the access token itself. So given that I now have this access token, when I perform the request itself, the request to get the information from the table, and I sent this request, you can see that it was successfully executed, and that this is the content that returned from my request. Now, if we move to API key, so here you can see the API key that was specified, and here actually the same request is performed to get from the same project the same table information, and that of course is clear, is obvious. When I send this request, it is also executed, and I'm getting my data. If I would be using domain locking now, let's test this out. We add an API key, and I will add another one. Let's call this domain locked, role read only, and we give this a domain, for example, mywebsite.com, and clearly Postman will not be running this from mywebsite.com. So let's go to the variables, where I change now the API key to the new API key that is domain locked. So I delete it and I paste the new key. Let's save this and let's move to the API key. and now perform this request. Now you can see here clearly the message forbidden. So obviously the Postman domain being used is not mywebsite.com, so this was forbidden and not executed, and so hereby I show how you can use domain locking in combination with an API key for an extra security level around your StellarDS.io API. And so with that, I'm happy to share with you through possible ways to secure or authenticate your API requests with StellarDS.io. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you like to see more content like this, don't forget to subscribe to this channel and you will be informed when we have the next video on StellarDS.io coming up. Meanwhile, know that you can create a free account with StellarDS.io, and with this free account you can already start playing with this service, play with your own data, etc. So I wish you happy coding with StellarDS.io.